Have you ever found yourself halfway through a bag of chips or a box of cookies and thought, what am I even doing right now? It's almost like you're on autopilot. But underneath that mindless munching, there's usually something much deeper going on. Old stories, buried emotions, childhood patterns we don't even realize we still had. And if you've ever felt like food is your comfort, your enemy, and your escape all at once, this episode is for you. Welcome to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast brought to you by Thinlicious. I'm your host, Ruth Sukup, and here we'll talk about everything from the science of weight loss to practical tips for making your health a priority in the midst of a busy life. It's a little bit nerdy, a little bit funny, and a little bit revolutionary. So buckle up, friend, because it's about to get real. Hey there, and welcome back to the Feel Better, Live Free podcast. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruth Sukup, and I'm the founder of Thinlicious and the creator of the Thin Adapted System, as well as the New York Times bestselling author of 7 books. And today we are chatting with Isabel Chiara, the creator of the Life Actualization Process, a transformational mentor and intuitive guide who has spent the past 30 years helping women step into their power and live more intentionally. And in this episode, we're talking all about emotional eating, how our earliest experiences with food shape our behaviors today, and what it really takes to stop the cycle of self-sabotage. We also dig into the deeper work, how to tune into your triggers, reframe your cravings, and begin the process of healing your relationship with food from the inside out. And beyond that, we talk about letting go of resentment, finding meaning in the hard stuff, and how to start seeing every challenge as a gift in disguise. This is such a powerful conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So let's get right into it. Isabel, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
It's so nice to meet you. Thank you for having me, Ruth.
You're welcome. So let's just start with the question I ask everyone. Tell me a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and how you got to be doing what you are now.
Well, I want to say that my whole life has kind of been centered around food because I was in the food industry growing up, and I was in family business. And I think that's the foundation for everything. And so the focus was on food, but actually the focus was, how we ate, the whole conversation around food at the dinner table. But we were a very busy family because we were all in the restaurant business, and our food became what our life was centered around. But in actuality, we didn't really focus on the food. We actually focused on, our business.
Yeah.
And so
a restaurant especially is hard.
Right. And there was a lot of emotional kind of conversations around it, high energy conversations, I'll just say. It was like, I always like to say it's like a fast order chef, like, here, take this, do this. And that's kind of how food went. Put a big plate in the middle of the table, everybody grab what they want. Okay, it's very fast paced. So actually my life has been that way. And it started at an earlier age, and that's how the tempo was. And I thought that was normal. And if I went to another person's home, actually, and, their meals were more balanced. I remember going to friends' homes and they would have, a piece of meat and a piece of vegetable and, a potato or something on the table. And it was very portioned out. And, I come from an Italian family. There's no portions involved. You just have whatever you want whenever. So, I never had those parameters. And I feel like that's really what happens in your mind and in your mindset. What are the parameters around food and eating? There were not, like, basically I grew up with none. And, but it was normal. That was normal. And it was for many years. And don't forget, when I went to other people's homes, like cousins or relatives, they served food the same way.
Oh,
Middle of
because
the
that was your whole,
table,
that was
you
just your
know,
culture.
it's just the culture.
Yeah.
So I never really put two and two together, but now that I'm speaking to you, that's kind of really what set the precedent. Anyway, uh I remember I went into the restaurant one time and this I never ever thought about weight or weight gain or anything like that. And this gentleman that had been working for us for a long time said, huh, I was only 12 or 13. Huh, look at those hamburger and French fries you keep eating. It looks like they're going to your belly. And I was like, then I started thinking about it.
Yeah. That was
And
kind
that
of the first
I
moment.
and then I you know how when someone says something to you, it's hard to let it go. That was that was one of those moments in my life. And I thought, well, I'm not going to not eat hamburger and French fries. Like it was an earlier age. It was like in the 70s. So it was something that there was no conversation. There was not the conversations about diet or anything really at that age. It wasn't like it is now, when people are speaking about diets and um, but because I didn't have those parameters, I thought that, sky's the limit. And that was a space where I felt, very comfortable. It was like a free for all. I didn't, there was no parameters put on as far as also, oh, you can't really have this. That was really one big part of my life when your parents are disciplining you, where I could say, oh, there's no parameters here. And so if I felt anxious about stuff, I never looked at what I was anxious about. I learned to know that food became a solution that made me feel better and felt okay.
Mm.
So I kind of grew up like that, and um, that became my go-to way to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So then how did that transform into your adult life?
What happened is, also didn't know anything about nourishment. I knew nothing about what were good foods or bad foods. And like people weren't really discussing that at that point. And that's when all the, fast food dinners came out, the Swanson
Lean
dinners and things
cuisine.
like that. And they were so yummy, the Kraft macaroni and cheese and our hamburger helper for me. And I started, I thought those were, God's gift to our family. Because we were a working family. We weren't home. Everything had to be a quick meal. So what ended up happening is, of course, I started to gain weight, but gained I gained weight, but I was still thin. But now food became an obsession. So through the years, of course, then I went to college, and of course, everybody was watching their weight when I ended up going to college. And so we started trying all of the diets and diet plans. Started with the Scarsdale diet. And of course, you do really well on your first diet because you're very focused. But then later on, the diets become you're less in tune with the diet. They don't feel great. And then it becomes a struggle. I developed this whole struggle with food. And but still I wasn't super heavy. I just thought that, dieting because it was really, which I didn't notice at that point, it was really because I was out of control. And the food was controlling me instead of me controlling the food. So the thing that I used to actually, it served a big purpose. Food does serve that purpose in life because it's something that allows us to feel really safe.
Yes.
It, it feels like it's almost like an empowering thing.
Hmm.
It becomes something that's, it is nourishing to us because our whole body, like if we're anxious or we're we don't feel good. We're in a fight with somebody, we argue with somebody, or, something's happening with our girlfriends or our boyfriend or something. We're going to go to food or some kind of sugary snack. So,
Right.
well, that was what it was for me. Other people have other
Right.
things, but
It's triggering that dopamine rush in your
yes.
brain.
Yeah. So I think that just became more of a comfort as the years went by. And then I realized at some point it was something that I needed to get a handle on because at some point I did start gaining weight. Um, and I started looking for other solutions for myself, which, as diet was one of them, I felt the need to find something in my life that was more another nourishing thing for myself in my life. And I began to look at spirituality, and I started looking at energy, studying every modality, which I have really studied. And I have gone all over the world and studied with many masters. I started doing past life regression, thinking, let me blame it on that, and started doing
How
that.
did
Um,
that work out?
well, I have to tell you, these all these modalities are so interesting.
Yeah,
It gave
I
me
bet.
I actually studied with Dick Sutphin, who's one of the original persons that did do past life regression. And I don't even know how I found him, but I ended up having a great connection with him. And It was a good 10 years. People thought I was a nutcase. It was way before anybody was doing past life regression, and I was doing it. Not only that, I was having a sensation of different past lives and things like that. So that became a whole thing. But I guess the point is that I was looking to spirituality. I was really looking to leave my body in order to spiritualize myself, so to speak, like really just go outside of myself to reach for the angels or reach for something that could make me feel okay. And
Mhm.
so through many years of doing all of this work, I've done shamanism, and I mean, I can't even, there's a list that's like pages long. I made a list one day of what I did. But I did get a lot of really good training and a lot of intuitive energy training also over the years. And but I never integrated that as I learned it, but I never really integrated it into my life. And then it wasn't just till recently that I have come with to the point where um in my journey with the food thing, and realized that it was about me really getting centered in my body and living within my body and feeling the feelings and sensations in my body. That is the most important thing. And realize that the whole path that I have been searching for is this path of nourishment to really
Mm.
feed myself, not food. I was really this whole time looking for a really grounded spirituality, a real connection with myself. And that
Mhm.
was the search that I was on, my whole life.
That's so relatable. And yet, so it
Yeah,
was like there was a hole inside of you that you were just filling with food over and over and over again, but it was
right.
something deeper. Yeah, that's so relatable.
Exactly. And from that training, so I actually call myself a life actualizer because but when I speak to people, because I have, such resources from all over the places here, that I realize that um, I can hear in people like what their beliefs are, what their feelings are, what their sensations are, and kind of bring them back around in order to help them get that nourishment, the feeling and then sensations in their body that they can nurture for themselves and have them feel. I think the goal for everyone is to feel whole, to feel like they're living their full potential.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like that I bring to the table when I am working with people, when I talk to people, and when I just get down to the nitty gritty with people, because I am that kind of person
Yeah.
where I just I go, oh, blah blah blah, this is what's going on with you, and so it's usually a good conversation, good starting point with people, you
Huh.
know.
That's so interesting. I mean, in just your whole journey of and the journey to self-realization that you've spent all this time. I mean, especially food is so emotional, right? And especially I can just like hear it in your story coming from Italian family where everything is centered around food and it just becomes it's the way that you were shown love probably and it becomes the way that you receive love, it becomes the way that you receive comfort, it becomes the way that you receive everything. And yet when we like find in our lives that thing that has always provided comfort, that has always provided the love, that has always provided our emotional security is no longer serving us, then how do you replace it? I mean, that's a big question. That's a big question to walk people through. So tell me a little bit about your process. Like how do you do that for people when they kind of come to this realization that, oh my gosh, I'm trying to fill a hole inside me with food that actually needs to be filled somewhere else? I mean, that feels like a question that you could spend your whole life trying to answer.
Right. Well, believe it or not, I like to start with what their cravings are, right? Because I
Interesting. What
feel
does
like
that tell you?
um it well, with the cravings, it also I start with where the triggers are too, right?
Okay.
Like what is it that what is the emotion about that they're having, right?
Mm,
That what has guided them to go to whatever they're doing, a binge or feel lonely or feel however they're feeling, what's brought them to that point. And after we get to that point, then we have a whole discussion. And, no one's the same. Everybody's the same, but really, they're not really. They have different things that bother them and they have different underlying beliefs. And I like to get down to the underlying belief. And I also like to get back to the point where do they think it started? Because they know. And a lot of people, it seems like, go to a certain particular point in their life that they can't forget.
mm,
Like
so
somebody
true.
did to them, something happened to them. And at that point, I like to go into that whole dynamic because it is a dynamic and see what it is that is really what they form from what beliefs they form from it, what they took away from that situation. And I have found that people live that situation like every day. Every time they make a decision, they're passing through that event in their life. And
Yeah, but
there's
not consciously or consciously.
no, unconsciously.
Mm,
They remember it, but it's unconscious when they are
yeah,
processing,
they don't connect
when they make
that event
decisions.
with the decision that they're making.
Yeah.
That's so
Sometimes,
interesting.
yeah, sometimes it's really easy, it's just go to that one point and just go to that point, look at it, take it apart, heal from that experience. And that's why I created my app, because people could do it on their own. They don't need a therapist or they don't need a guide.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, so because I had all these processes that I was doing with people, and I had no way. I wanted to put it all together so people could just go and do it themselves and kind of get out from underneath that whole whatever the experience is that's still affecting them. But anyway, so sometimes it's really simple. Just go into that one thing, and sometimes it manifests into something physical in their life. Like I do believe that a physical manifestation of something, like hives or some kind of a breakout or headaches, things like that,
Hmm.
um, can be can go back to similar different situations in life.
Huh.
Fears, anxieties for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Oh, yeah.
sure.
I can see that. So what
Um,
are some of the underlying beliefs typically that you see are connected for people?
well,
Is there like
definitely, I want to, I think there's some main foundational ones. So
hmm
one of the ones that I think is so important, is the I'm not good enough routine. I
mm,
call, wait, let's call it a
so
racket.
big.
I'm not good enough racket because it's what keeps bringing you back to allowing yourself to not feel good about things. We don't feel good about sometimes, we don't feel good. I don't say everybody. We don't feel good about how we responded to somebody, good about how we was at work today, our relationship with somebody. So it's about every what if we have underground underlying belief like that, and it will show up in every area of our life.
Yes.
So food is just
100%.
the resolution that we've come up with. But we never looked at how do we not go back to feeling anxious or judging ourselves or criticizing ourselves every moment of our life. And at the end of the day, I say we set ourselves up. I like to say we set ourselves up to eat or binge or drink. So it could be anything, or do whatever there's an underlying criticism with ourselves, and we don't let ourselves off the hook a lot of times.
And well, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because if you're
Right,
not good enough and you're not measuring up and then you overeat and you've just proven to yourself that you're not good enough, that you can't stick with it, that you can't do the thing.
right,
And so therefore you have to punish yourself again and it like just becomes
right,
this doom spiral.
right. And then in order to not feel so horrible, we say, okay, well, we'll just diet tomorrow, but today I'm going to eat whatever I want. So we have all these
Yes.
things that we keep setting ourselves up in, and we're now in a catch
Yeah.
22. So, and there's, so many plenty of other things that just another thing that I think is really big is doing something that is new to us. A lot of people have that, I call that also a integrate, what do I call it? It's eating into the abyss of the unknown is what I call that.
Mm.
And it's we don't know, so sometimes our body's the one that's really speaking to us, even
Mm-hmm.
though if we've suppressed it with food, it doesn't really matter. So eating to the abyss of the unknown is really about something, we're doing something new, or we're going to meet somebody new, or we're going for a job interview, or we're going to help a bunch of people that we don't know who we're going to be around, right? And that
Yeah.
can create a lot of unsafety inside
Mm-hmm.
of us. And
Yeah.
so sometimes I also have gotten to the point where I've noticed things that are about to happen 3 or 4 days from now. My body's reacting 4 days prior and saying, starting to get anxious. And
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot. A lot of people don't notice that unless you're like really in tune with yourself. You're not noticing that, and maybe you need some kind of comfort. So I don't say food is bad. I
Mm-hmm.
never would say that. Food is like the greatest gift to us to get us to really learn about ourselves, know about ourselves, and really nourish ourselves. It's been our greatest asset. It's
Yeah.
helped us when we really needed it most.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great way of reframing it to
yeah.
really and I talk a lot about that too of changing the paradigm of from food as the enemy or something that you're fighting with or something that is a temptation, right? Like all these negative connotations that we have when we're trying to lose weight and get healthy and all the things and I mean so many areas, right? Even as you're talking about, I'm like so many things that are so screwed up in our brains about food and what we've grown up with and the comfort and the emotions and all the stuff that goes into it, right? But to reframe it of just like this is nourishment. This is nourishment for your body, for your soul. And how do you reframe it into a way that it becomes a very positive thing versus a very negative thing? I just think that is it's such a huge, powerful mindset shift to
Yeah.
make for most people, but it's literally life changing when you can make that
Right.
shift.
It's the same thing with people, as long as we're talking about nourishment. It's the same thing with people in our lives that we get upset with, that we get angry with, but they're really kind of pointing out something within ourselves that we're not okay with. If we look at it like that, like, why did that person just step in my life? And now my life is, whatever you say, somebody would say a mess, or I'm so confused now, or I'm so like that person. I know, and it's hard to say, but if we really go back on some of the people, we say, oh, well, that person caused me to find another way of life, or made me leave a really terrible relationship and I found something else. And oh, by that person, I signed up for a new course and I learned this, and now that's my new business. So I just think that there's a gift in every situation. It's really hard to look at it like that. I'm not saying it's easy,
Not always,
but
for sure.
if we do, I also say that I don't know if I'm in the middle of something with somebody, I go, I don't know what the gift is yet, but I know there's a gift inside of this right now.
I have to tell myself about that, myself that
I
about
just
my
know there
teenagers.
is.
Like, there's going to be something here that I really appreciate someday, but it's not
Right.
today.
Well, because I like to look really deeply at things, and to see what it really is. And if it's pointing out something. Now the times, I think if you keep doing that type of exercise with yourself where you're looking at how this is serving me the most, that
Mm,
eventually the angry part or the anxiousness part might get less and less, and it might be a quicker fix when
yeah,
you start to look at life like that.
it's like
Then
a habit
maybe it
that you have to
doesn't
build.
happen as much. Also, I feel like if we're starting to look at it and we're getting it, and then
Yeah,
we create bigger boundaries with ourselves and with
yeah,
others that are
yeah,
justified, the people around us start to change.
yeah,
So because a lot of people leave, they leave, your energy's shifting, and now
yeah.
you're like, you know what, that's really not working for me anymore.
Yeah. Well,
And
it
it's
is,
not
I mean,
me. Yeah,
that's so true of anything, right? Like you can't change other things. You can't change the circumstances, but you can change yourself and how you respond. I think of like
right,
just you saying that reminds me of just my relationship with my husband, right? We're two very strong-willed people. And that like can be great. It can be magical. And it can also be like, butting
right,
heads because
of
we're polar
course.
opposites in so many ways. And for many years, right, like first however many years of our marriage,
Hmm.
we would butt heads and we would have these giant fights, right? Because we're both so stubborn and we wouldn't back, neither
Right,
of us would back down, and we would not talk for days because we'd be so mad at each other but we both had terrible memories. So then finally we would both forget what we were mad about and then we would make up. And at some point, and I don't remember when it was many, many years ago, thankfully, but at some point in our relationship, we kind of adopted this you do you, boo. Like that's our mantra for our marriage, right? Is you do you,
right.
boo. And
I
it's
like
amazing how that shifted because the things that used to annoy me about him, right? Like that I would want to change. Now I just you do you, boo. Like doesn't matter to me. And he's not trying to change me and I'm not trying to change him. And instead of feeling like, no, you have to do it my way, where there's this friction, it's we both somehow changed to just allow each other to be, right? And we never fight anymore. Like that's so rare because that's the
Mhm.
mantra. And that wasn't changing him. I didn't change him. He still is who he is. And he didn't change me. I still am who I am, but we changed our approach of just like it's okay. I can let this person be in my life and be who they are, and I can be who I am, and it doesn't matter. Like it's amazing. It just reminds me of what you were saying, right? Like you change your perspective and you see the gift in that, and it changes how you view everybody else.
Right. But also, it's so great for you, right? It's because you don't have any of those feelings all day long that are, your festering anger in your
Yes.
body. Because I never realized this, but that kind of anger stays in your tissues,
Really?
it stays in your body.
Yeah,
And,
I can see that.
and you're holding on to that.
I
And then
can
it
see that.
starts to actually build you up from the inside out too. Like
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
it also creates that protective wall around you.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not accepting this behavior, or no, I'm not going to accept this behavior. And then poof, here
Then
you
you're a hot mess. So going back to the kind of these underlying triggers, right? And how you work through this with people. Um, how like how do you catch yourself? Basically, once you identify it and kind of go back there, and the app part is really interesting. I want to talk about that in a second. But once you kind of go, oh yeah, this is the trigger, right? For me, this is the craving that I have. This is the trigger. This is the underlying reason. This is the thing that happened in my childhood that causes this that I keep going back to and reliving over and over again. Right.
Yeah.
Once you actually like, because a lot of times it's identifying and it's taking it out of the subconscious and making it conscious. But how do you then, is that all it takes? Right. Is there another step
Well, you want to hear a
changing
surprising
the
thing?
behavior?
I so then the next step of that would be to bring the person back through their whole life. And not that you have to go through every single thing, you do not. Move forward in the life without that. You have that feeling. It almost, it kind of ends up in your body, ends up in your psyche somehow when you look at that. You look at it differently, and all of a sudden it's like you melted this whole like energetic thing that you held on to your whole life that you move forward in
Mm-hmm.
your life with. So it kind of, it melts on some level. And then I have people move through their life without that sensation, without that feeling. And so they could you feel actually in your body. I have people with their eyes closed because they're kind of they're having this whole experience, move
Mm-hmm.
forward in their life without that particular behavior in it. And it's now you come to the point of the age that you are now or your present time, and it, it kind of is released somehow in
Yeah.
the body. It's
Wow.
energetic, and it's, people would probably say, I don't know about that one. But when you're doing it, you kind of feel like a weight is taken off of you. Get that
Yeah.
food kind of weighs you down, weighted down effect that we keep doing to ourselves when we eat or binge or that kind of behavior. We're not taking
Yeah.
care of ourselves. You're like releasing layers from your body.
Yeah. No, I can 100%
Yeah.
see how powerful that would be. I mean, I think about just in my own life and in trauma, right? Childhood trauma and having to go
Right.
through a lot of therapy, but then through the process of that, learning how to release it and let it go and then being done with it, right? Like those particular traumatic things that caused all sorts of depression and PTSD and things in my 20s have not affected me for 25 years because I was able to fully release them. I can talk about it without breaking down, right? It does not impact my life. Like it is healing. I think that what comes out of like what I hear you saying is that healing is possible. That whatever defined you as a child does not have to define you as an adult, nor does it have to rule your life to the point where it's causing self-destructive behavior anymore. It is 100% possible to just let it go, but it takes some work.
Right. But it does take work. And it's the work I think it takes to look at it from the inside out and not,
Yeah, the
I'm going to take
self-reflection, and you
some
have to feel the
pill that will
feelings
make
at
me
some
feel
point.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not I think we're scared to feel the feelings because I wasn't trained to feel my feelings.
Hmm.
I was trained to feel a couple of feelings, but not any, sadness was like taboo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so if you're trying to keep sadness away from yourself or anybody's trying to keep that away, then at the end of the day you're going to end up feeling that way. One day you're going to feel it and it's going to be like in kind of like a waterfall of sadness, and we will eventually have to deal with it or look at
Yeah.
it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
um
But there's hope.
I don't
That's what I
know.
take away from it.
I was going to say the people that are doing the work, like you're doing work
Yeah.
and you have your podcast, and people get to think about all the conversations you have in your podcast, and they get to own it or not own it. Say, oh, that's similar to me, and we get to look at it from all the people that are doing the work. So I think that in order to release a lot of these conflicts within us or these patterns, the people that have gone through so many years of doing the work have made it easier for people to kind of shift through it now, because it's almost in the consciousness of humanity that we can resolve these things in a quicker time frame. It doesn't have to be like 30 years or
Yeah.
40 years. There's so many quicker ways in which to look at things.
Yeah.
About like quickness, like, here, let's deal with it. Let's look at this. Let's get you nourished and then let's move on. Who wants to stay and, work at them, work on
Yeah.
themselves like every moment of the day, you know.
Are there any like daily practices that you find kind of help people stay on track or help kind of cultivate this idea that like I can let the past go in my daily life? Is there how do you stay present in like here's where I am right now? Do you are there any daily practices that you recommend?
Well, first of all, I really think it's important to pray.
Mm.
Pray and
I'm a
really,
big believer in that.
I mean, I think that's just a really important way to connect and to really ask for support
Mhm.
in your life also, to a higher power, whatever anyone's preference is. But I just really think it's important to pray. And ultimately, you're like letting yourself hear yourself too. You can look at it like
Mm.
that if you're against prayer. But there have been so many studies showing that prayer is kind of very healing. And then I like to do a body scan where
Mm.
I, start from whichever, the top of my head and really have a dialogue with a lot of my head, my throat, my eyes, my heart, and I want to know what these parts of my body are saying. Like, what do I need? I ask questions like, what do I need? What's happening? Is there anything that, what feelings are there? Because that's the part that I avoided my whole life. So that is really key in order to work your way through the whole body. And I think it's a way to keep yourself clean and healed too,
Yeah.
to really find out what your body's saying to you.
That mindfulness piece is so important of just being present in your body
Right.
and really that's been huge for me my whole
Right.
life, right? Like just learning how to deal through those emotions of being able to like express and know and identify what's happening in your body and what the emotions are that are triggering it. So huge. Isabel, I feel like we could keep talking about this for the next hour, but we are actually out of time. So
Yeah.
before we go, can you just please let us know where we can find out more about you, find out more about, tell us a little bit about your app, how we can find that. And of course, we will link to everything in the show notes as well.
So I have an app and it's called Nourish, and I have an offering for your guests too.
Oh,
That
great.
it's one free month, and we'll put that in the show notes also.
Okay.
And it's a great way to really check in with, go through a lot of patterns and a lot of these things in your life. Um, they're activations, but they're kind of meditative. They bring you through a whole process. There's a healing at the end of each process, and it allows you to really look at yourself. It is phenomenal how deep it gets, and you're being supported the whole time um,
I love that.
by my voice. Anyway, and so my website's called Isabel-Chiara, Chiara. So it's Isabel, Isabel -Chiara.com, and everything's there. And I have a book coming out also, which is going to be
Great.
called Nourish, but I have two other books that I've already written called Eat Your Words and another book called Bod Behavior, which you can find on Amazon or you could find on my website also. But it was such a
Awesome.
pleasure being here with you today.
Hey, well, thank you so much for coming. I loved our conversation. And once again, we will link to all of those in the show notes. So if you didn't catch the spelling or the names of all the things, don't worry, just check the show notes. And thank you, Isabel, for being here today. All right, guys, that about does it for this episode. Remember that you will find the link to Isabel's website along with her process and her app and all of the other resources that we talked about today right in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. And if you know someone else who might be struggling with emotional eating or just needs to hear this message today, please be sure to send it their way. Then, of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast to be notified of future episodes. And I will see you back here for another new episode very soon.